You've watched over 20 hours of N8N tutorials, you've saved over 15 different workflows, and yet you still can't build a reliable automation from scratch. Stop! You're stuck in a tutorial loop, and it's because you've been told a set of lies about how to learn N8N. In this video, I'm giving you 5 brutal truths tutorials won't tell you, starting with the fact that just watching videos could be the problem and not the solution. You know that feeling when you've watched like 10 N8N tutorials? You could swear that you're learning, but when you open N8N yourself, your mind goes blank. It's the illusion of progress. You feel productive because you're consuming information, but in reality, you're just stacking knowledge with no proper structure to hold it up. You're learning passively instead of solving real problems. It's like watching cooking videos all day on YouTube. You know all the technique, all the recipes, but when you finally walk into the kitchen, you realize you've never actually cooked. That's precisely what happens with N8N. You understand what the nodes do, you can follow along the tutorial perfectly, but when it's time to build something from scratch, you freeze. And here is why that happens. Tutorials are designed to show you what's possible, not to teach you how to think. They like training wheels, useful at first, but if you never take them off, you'll never learn how to ride. So here is the shift that you need to make. After every tutorial you watch, build one small workflow of your own. Let's say you just watch a tutorial on sending a Slack message from Google Sheets. Don't just copy it, tweak it, send yourself a message when a new row is added, or connect it to a Notion instead of Slack. The goal isn't to replicate, it is to adapt, because that's when you start thinking in terms of logic, not steps. Another trick I recommend is to explain what you have just learned, as if you were teaching to someone else. When you can explain how the node works without looking it up, that's when you have actually learned it. And don't worry if your first few workflows are messy. Everyone starts there. Eventually something will click and you will realize that you don't need tutorials anymore. So stop watching and start building. Because no amount of watching will ever replace the confidence that comes from creating something that actually works. When you first dive into N8N, it's easy to get overwhelmed. There are hundreds of nodes, each one of them doing something different. And you start thinking, I need to learn them all before I can build anything real. But here is the truth. You don't need to master every node to be great at N8N. That's like trying to memorize the entire dictionary before writing your first sentence. Let me give you a better analogy. Imagine you're a builder. You walk into a massive workshop filled with every tool. Drill, saw, sanders, laser levels, you name it. If you try to learn every single tool before you starting first project, you will never build anything. A real builder starts with the core tools, they master those first, and once they understand how building works, they can pick up any new tool. That's exactly how N8N works. There are a handful of core nodes that power almost everything you'll ever create. If you understand those deeply, you'll be able to build practically any automation, even those that look complex from the outside. Here are the few examples. The HTTP request node, your ultimate connector. It lets you talk to any API even if N8N doesn't have built-in node for it. The set node shapes your data, renames your fields, and keeps your workflow organized. The if and switch nodes handle decision making and conditional logic. The merge node combines data from multiple paths or sources. And then finally the code node, your flexible problem solver, when you need custom logic and any other existing nodes doesn't work. If you've seen my other video, 90 nodes that power 90% of workflows, you already know this idea in action. That video breaks down the exact nodes I rely on most and show you that you don't need to master hundreds of nodes to build powerful automations. Here is what happens when you chase every node. You will end up knowing a little bit about everything, but not enough to build confidently. But when you focus on the fundamentals, those 50 to 20 core nodes, something will eventually shift. You will start recognizing patterns, you will stop guessing and start understanding. And suddenly, when you came across a new node, you don't panic, because you already know how to think in N8N. Here is your challenge. Stop chasing every shiny new node, pick your core set, maybe start with the ones from the 19 video and go deep. Use them in different contexts, break them, rebuild them, push their limits, because once you master the fundamentals, every new node becomes just another tool in your toolbox. Not something to fear, but something to use with confidence. Remember, great builders don't own every tool, they just know how to use the right ones really, really well. This one separates beginners from builders. When you're first learning N8N, it's tempting to focus only on the happy path, the version where everything works perfectly. But here is the truth. the real workflows break. API falls, data comes in a weird format, a single missing field can crash an entire automation. And if you don't build with that in mind, you will spend more time fixing workflows than running them. You can't scale or trust your automations without error handling. Error handling in N8N doesn't stop problems from happening, it stops them from taking everything down with them. Now, many people skip this step because it feels advanced, but it's not. It's just about adding a few safety checks. Here are the few simple ways to start. Use the error trigger node. This node catches any workflow failure globally and then lets you decide what to do next. You can send yourself a Slack message, email, or even log the error to Notion or Google Sheet. That way you always know when something breaks, instead of finding out days later. Add if checks before critical steps. Let's say you're sending an email, but sometimes the email field is empty. Add an if node to check if that field exists before sending. It's a 10-second fix that saves you time debugging later. Use function nodes for safe transformations. Wrap your logic in try-catch blocks if you're doing something complex. That way, if something unexpected happens, your workflow doesn't completely fail. It just skips or logs the issue. Leverage the continue on fall option. Sometimes you don't want the whole workflow to stop because one step has failed. Turning this on, keeping the rest of your workflow automation running, great for batch processing. And here is the mindset shift. Debugging isn't a chore, it's a superpower. It's the difference between someone who plays with N8N and someone who builds with it professionally. When you understand how to catch, log, and recover from errors, you stop being afraid of failure. You can experiment more, try bigger ideas, and push your automations further, because you know they won't completely fall apart. Every minute you spend adding error handling saves you hours of frustration later. A good workflow runs smoothly, but a great workflow knows how to fail gracefully. This one is a bit sneaky, because it's easy to think your workflow works perfectly until it doesn't. You test it once, everything looks great, and you move on. But then a week later something breaks, and you realize it only worked because you've tested it with the perfect data. Most people don't test their workflows with enough real data. They test the happy path, the clean, ideal version, where everything behaves exactly as expected. However, in production data can be messy. API sends weird responses, users forget to fill out the fields, data comes in the wrong format, and suddenly your perfect workflow collapses under the weight of reality. So to do it properly, feed your workflows multiple examples of input data. Don't just test one record, test 5, 10 or 20 with variety. Try missing fields, different formats, and unexpected values. See how your workflow reacts. Use sample data from the real runs. In N8N you can run nodes individually and see their actual payload. Simulate failure scenarios. Manually break something, maybe send an incorrect request, invalid JSON, or maybe remove a field. Watch how your workflow handles it. If it crashes, good. Now you know what to fix before it happens live. Log and review test results. Over time, this helps you spot patterns and improve your workflow design. Because here is the thing. Testing isn't about proving your workflow works, it's about finding out how it fails. That's where the real learning happens. If you start testing with enough data, you will stop being surprised by errors. You start predicting them, designing around them. That's the difference between someone who uses N8N and someone who builds with confidence. So before you call a workflow done, ask yourself this. Have I tested this with enough real-world data? Because if the answer is no, then you are not done. You're just lucky it hasn't broken. This one might sting a little because it feels productive. You're building, experimenting, connecting APIs, and every new workflow feels like progress. But here is the truth. If you don't know what you're building, it's just digital noise. A lot of people fall into this trap. They open an A10, see all the possibilities, and start connecting random things just to see what happens. And don't get me wrong, that's great when you're experimenting. But if you want to actually use automation to save time or create value, you need to start with the goal. You wouldn't walk into a hardware store, buy every tool you see, and then get home and realize you don't have a project. That's what it's like building automations without purpose. You have the tools but no blueprint. Automating random tasks doesn't create value, so start with a use case. Instead of saying I want to build something cool with Notion, you could say I want to automatically log every new lead from Typeform into Notion, tag it with the source, and send myself a Slack alert. Now you've got a direction. You're solving a real problem, not just playing with features. When you start with a goal, three things happen. You build faster because you know exactly what success looks like. You debug smarter because every step has a reason to exist. You stay motivated because you can see the real-world impact on what you're building. Here is a quick framework I like to use before building anything. Ask yourself 3 questions. What problem am I solving? How will I measure success? What's the smallest version of this I can build first? The last one is key, because if your goal is too big, like automate my entire business, you will never finish it. But if your goal is small and clear, like save 10 minutes a day by automating client onboarding emails, you will finish it, feel the progress, and build momentum. And the best part? Once you start solving real problems, you will naturally learn faster. Because every workflow you build has a purpose. It's connected to your work, your team, your goals. So before you open N8N and start dragging nodes around, pause for a second and ask yourself, what's the outcome I actually want here? Because when your automations are driven by purpose, they stop being experiments and start becoming assets. I really enjoy breaking down these complex AI topics for you here on the channel. But for me, the most exciting part is putting it all into practice. As a software engineer with over a decade of experience, I specialize in building custom systems. If you're ready to move from learning about AI to implementing it, I can help. You can find the first link in the description below to book a call. Let's see if we can work together.